Okay, let's dive in. We're looking at some pretty fascinating ancient source material today, specifically commentaries on the Dhammapada.
Mm-hmm.
And they tell a really, well, a wild story.
They really do.
Imagine one of the most powerful, spiritually advanced figures you can think of.
Yeah.
A chief disciple of the Buddha himself.
Yeah, someone known for incredible psychic abilities. Really renowned.
And then picture them meeting just a shockingly violent, brutal end.
And what's remarkable, I think, is that these texts, they don't shy away from it. They recount this event, the death of Mahāmoggallāna.
Right.
And they go deep into why it happened, which on the surface seems completely unfitting for someone of his stature, you know?
Exactly. So our mission today, really, is to unpack this whole narrative from the sources you've brought. We want to understand the motivations, this tangled web, the pretty intense consequences that unfolded, and the profound ancient teaching about cause and effect, about karma.
Yeah, what does this dramatic story actually reveal? Why did such a revered figure, someone so powerful, meet such a violent fate?
And what's the lesson here about how karma can work, sometimes in really surprising ways?
Definitely. The setting is ancient India, remember, a time with competing spiritual paths, real worldly power in play.
And this deep understanding or belief in karma woven into everything.
Absolutely. So let's set the scene first. Who exactly was Mahāmoggallāna?
Good place to start.
Well, right off the bat, the sources make it clear he wasn't just any monk. He was one of the Buddha's top 2 disciples. Truly exceptional.
And particularly known for these psychic abilities you mentioned.
Extraordinary ones, yeah. Not just small things. The texts describe him actually traveling to other realms.
Other realms, like heaven and hell.
Exactly. Heavenly realms, even hell realms.
Okay, but why? What was the purpose of doing that?
Well, it wasn't just tourism. You know, when he'd come back, he would report to people about the kind of actions, the karma, that led to being reborn in those specific places. He'd talk about the positive results of good deeds and, well, the negative outcomes of bad ones.
Okay, so he was essentially like living proof, a walking testament to the power of karma and the benefits of following the Buddha's path.
You could say that. And this, according to the sources, created a major problem for some other groups.
A problem how?
It attracted a lot of followers, a lot of support, gain, and honor, the texts call it, for the Buddha and his community.
Right.
And these other ascetics, the sources refer to them as heretics or sometimes naked ascetics, they became incredibly jealous.
Jealous of the support the Buddha's followers were getting.
Pretty much, yeah. They saw all this gain and honor flowing towards the Buddhist community, and they believed a big part of it was because of Mahāmoggallāna's reports.
Because his stories encouraged people to do good deeds, support the monks.
Exactly. And these other ascetics, they felt they were the ones who deserved that support, that honor.
And simple jealousy escalated, all the way to plotting murder.
That's what the sources say, yes. They apparently held a meeting, decided the best way to redirect that gain and honor to themselves was to, well, eliminate the source.
Eliminate Mahāmoggallāna.
They agreed, and this is pretty chilling, to kill him by whatever means necessary.
Wow. Wow. And how do they actually plan to carry this out?
Well, first they rallied their own followers, their supporters. They managed to collect a significant amount of money. The texts specify 1,000 kapatas.
Which was serious money back then.
Oh, absolutely. A substantial sum. And they used that money to hire professional assassins.
Not just disgruntled followers, but actual hitmen.
Yes, the texts are clear. Men who committed murder for hire.
And they sent these killers to where Mahāmoggallāna was staying.
Precisely. He was residing in a place called Karsila, Black Rock.
Okay.
And the instructions were simple. Go there, find him, kill him.
But I imagine that wasn't so easy. I mean, we're talking about a monk with extraordinary psychic powers.
Not easy at all. The sources actually detail the attempts. It took them time. For 2 whole months, they tried. The assassins would surround his residence at Karsila, thinking they had him trapped.
And how did he get away?
Well, the first time, get this, he apparently escaped through a keyhole.
Through a keyhole? Seriously?
Seriously. That's what the text says. It really emphasizes the kind of power he supposedly had.
No kidding. Okay, so what happened on the next attempts? They must have kept trying?
Oh, they did. They'd come back the next day, surround the place again, and again, Mahāmoggallāna would know they were there.
And this time?
This time, he escaped by going right through the roof, like breaking through the finial circle at the top and just flying off into the sky.
Flying away.
Yeah.
So for 2 months, the first month, the middle month, his powers protected him completely. The assassins couldn't lay a finger on him.
Exactly. But then, this is where the story takes a really crucial turn. It's quite poignant, actually, and central to the whole teaching here.
What happened?
When the final month of their attempts began, Mahāmoggallāna knew they were coming. But this time was different.
How so?
The text says he understood that the consequence of a past action, some past karma of his own, was ripening. It was drawing in, catching up to him, basically.
So he realized this was a karmic debt coming due.
That's the interpretation, yes. And understanding this, he made a conscious decision. He decided not to use his psychic power to escape this time.
He chose to face it.
He chose to accept the result of his past karma. So when the assassins came that final time, they found him. They seized him. And they carried out the brutal act they were hired for.
The description in the text, it's quite graphic, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It says they beat him so severely they broke his bones into pieces like rice grains.
Horrifying. And then they just left him.
Thinking he was dead, yes, they threw his body behind a bush and just walked away. Just left him there. Seems like an absolutely terrible, unfitting end.
It really does.
But incredibly, the story still doesn't end right there. Even in that state, absolutely shattered. Mahāmoggallāna had one last resolve.
Which was what? He couldn't possibly survive that.
Physically, no. But his mind was strong. He wanted to see the Buddha one last time before he passed away completely.
Wow. And he managed it.
According to the sources, yes. He gathered his powers for one final act. He wrapped himself in what's called a jhana wrapping.
Jhana wrapping, what's that?
It's described as using deep meditative concentration, jhana, to basically hold his broken body together, make it firm enough to travel.
Held together by pure concentration.
That's the idea. And then he flew through the air directly to where the Buddha was.
I mean, just trying to picture that. A body literally broken into pieces, flying through the air, held together by meditation, just to see his teacher.
It's an incredibly powerful image, isn't it? He arrived, paid his respects to the Buddha, and simply announced, "Venerable sir, I am going to pass away."
And what was the Buddha's reaction?
He knew, of course. He asked Mahāmoggallāna where he intended to pass away, which was back near Kosila. And then the Buddha made a specific request. Yes. He asked Mahāmoggallāna to speak the Dhamma, the teaching, and to display his psychic powers one final time.
Why?
Because, as the Buddha explained, there would be no future opportunity for the assembly to witness such a disciple again. It was a final teaching moment, in a way.
A last display of his attainment.
Exactly. So Mahāmoggallāna, apparently mirroring the final acts of Sariputta, the other chief disciple, performed various psychic feats, shared the Dhamma, paid his final respects, and then flew back to the forest near Kasila. And there he passed away.
What an incredible and incredibly tragic sequence of events.
It really is.
Okay, so now you have the death of this hugely important figure. The news must have spread like wildfire.
Oh, it did. The sources say the story that assassins had killed the elder Mahāmoggallāna went throughout all of Jambudipa.
Which is basically the ancient Indian subcontinent.
Yeah, essentially. So this wasn't some quiet hidden event. It was major news.
And because it was so major, the local ruler, King Ajatasattu, he got involved.
Yes, exactly. You couldn't have someone like Mahāmoggallāna assassinated without the state reacting. The king ordered his spies to find the killers.
And the way they found them? It's almost comical, if it wasn't so serious, according to the text anyway.
It really is. The spies apparently found the assassins later, celebrating. They were drinking alcohol.
Letting loose after the job.
Apparently so. And in their drunken state, one assassin casually struck another one on the back.
Okay.
And the one who got hit, kind of annoyed, basically said, "Hey, why'd you hit my back like that?" And the first one, maybe boasting, maybe just drunk and loose-lipped, replied something like, "Hey, you wicked assassin, wasn't it you who hit the elder Mahāmoggallāna first?"
Oh, wow.
And the other one shot back, "Well, didn't you know I hit him too?" Or words to that effect.
So they were literally arguing over who struck the first blow right in front of the king's spies.
Pretty much. The spies overheard them basically bragging, I hit him, I hit him." They rounded them all up, all these assassins, and reported straight back to the king.
So the king summoned them. They confessed, obviously.
They did. And when the king asked who put them up to it, who hired them,
They named the naked ascetics, the jealous rivals.
Exactly. They pointed the finger straight at them.
And then the king's justice. You described it earlier as swift and incredibly brutal.
It really was. The sources give a pretty grim account. The king had 500 of these naked ascetics arrested. along with the 500 assassins. So 1,000 people.
500 assassins. That's a lot.
Well, the text says they collected the 1,000 coins and hired assassins. Perhaps that implies a large group, or maybe it's symbolic, but that's the number given. 500 assassins and 500 ascetics.
Okay, so 1,000 people arrested, and then...
In the royal courtyard, he had ditches dug,
Yeah.
and he had them all buried, standing up to their navels.
Buried alive up to their waists.
Yes. And then he had them covered with straw and set the straw on fire.
Oh, my goodness.
And even after they were burned, it wasn't over.
What else could he do?
The text says he then had the entire area plowed over with iron plows, just crushing everything into the ground. Complete annihilation.
That is terrifying. State-sponsored terror, basically.
A very brutal form of ancient justice, certainly. And the sources add that 4 of the main assassins were also impaled on stakes, just to complete the picture.
Right, so that's the earthly consequence, the king's retribution for the murder. But meanwhile, back in the monastic community, the monks weren't focused on the king's justice. They had a different question.
Exactly. Away from the palace courtyard in the Dhamma hall, the monks were grappling with the core issue. How could a being like Mahāmoggallāna, someone so spiritually advanced, so powerful, how could he meet such a violent, seemingly unfitting death?
It just didn't make sense based on the life they saw him living?
Precisely. It seemed wrong. And this is the moment, the sources say, that the Buddha arrived and asked what they were discussing.
And they told him their confusion.
Yes. And the Buddha then provided the deeper explanation. He said, essentially, yes, for the man you knew in this life, it seems unfitting. But this death was perfectly fitting for the karma he created in a previous life.
Ah, okay. So this is the heart of it, the karmic explanation.
This is the core teaching derived from this event in these texts. And the Buddha then related the story of that specific past life.
Right. Can you walk us through that story? It sounds crucial.
Absolutely. It takes place, the Buddha said, a very, very long time ago in the city of Varanasi.
Okay.
And the main character was, ironically, a very good son from a respectable family.
A good son, known for being devoted to his parents, perhaps.
Incredibly devoted. His parents were elderly and they were both blind. And this son, he took care of everything for them. Pounding the grain, cooking the food, all the household chores. He did it all himself.
Okay, so a model of filial piety. What changed?
Well, his parents, despite being cared for, felt he should marry. They brought a young woman for him.
And his reaction?
Initially, he refused. He said, "No, I will care for you myself as long as you live." He was dedicated. But they kept insisting, asking him again and again.
And eventually he gave in.
He did. He finally agreed and married the young woman.
And the new wife. She wasn't perhaps thrilled about living with elderly, blind in-laws.
Not even slightly, according to the source. After just a few days of helping care for them, she apparently couldn't stand even seeing them.
That sounds harsh.
It's depicted very negatively. She started complaining constantly to her husband. "I can't live in the same house with them."
And did he listen?
Not at first. He presumably tried to ignore it or smooth things over, but she didn't give up. She actually resorted to deception.
Deception? How?
When her husband was out of the house, she would deliberately scatter things around. Little bits of fiber or like the foam from boiling rice gruel. She'd make a mess.
And when he came home and saw the mess?
He'd ask, "What is all this?" And she would blame the blind old parents. She'd say, "See, they just wander around, bumping into things, making the whole house dirty. I can't live like this."
Wow. That's calculated cruelty.
Yeah. And the text says, by complaining like this, again and again, using this manipulation, she eventually succeeded. She caused a rift, drove a wedge between the son and his parents.
Even though he had been so devoted, the text mentions he'd fulfilled perfections, right? Meaning he had a lot of good karma already.
Exactly. Even someone with a strong positive background could apparently be swayed by this constant negativity and deception, according to this story. It broke down his connection to his parents.
That's incredibly tragic. And this rift led to something awful.
It led to a truly terrible decision. The son, poisoned by his wife's complaints, decided he would know what to do with them. A very ominous phrase.
What did he do?
He fed his parents a meal. Then he told them, "Good news, your relatives in another place are waiting for you. We'll go visit them."
So he put them in a carriage.
Yes, a small carriage. And he drove them out deep into a forest, miles from anywhere. Once they were deep in the forest, he stopped. He handed the reins to his blind father and said, "Here, hold these. The oxen know the way. They'll follow the path by signal." Then he said, "I think there might be robbers around here. I'm going to get out and scout ahead."
But he wasn't scouting for robbers.
No, that was just a pretext. As soon as he was out of their sight, he changed his voice. He started making sounds like robbers attacking, shouting and yelling.
Oh, no.
And then he began to beat his own parents. Savagely.
Beating his blind elderly parents while pretending to be a robber.
Yes! It's horrific. The sources even say they cried out to him, recognizing his voice through the disguise or just sensing it was him, pleading, "Son, son, we're old. Don't worry about us. Just save yourself." Thinking maybe robbers really were attacking him.
But he didn't stop.
He didn't stop. He beat them until they were dead.
And then, did he just leave them there?
Threw their bodies into the bushes in the forest and simply returned home.
That's one of the most disturbing stories I've heard from these texts.
It is profoundly disturbing. A terrible act of patricide and matricide driven by manipulation and weakness.
So the Buddha told this story to the monks and connected it directly to Mahāmoggallāna's own violent death in this life.
Directly. He stated that Mahāmoggallāna, having committed that specific heinous act in that past life, experienced immense suffering as a result. First, he was reborn in hell.
For how long?
For many hundreds of thousands of years, the text says, an almost unimaginable duration of intense suffering.
Wow.
But even that wasn't the end of the karmic consequence. It didn't fully exhaust the negative karma.
There was still residue.
Exactly. The remaining result, the Buddha explained, followed him through subsequent lives. It caused him, in hundreds of future lifetimes, to be killed in a similar way, beaten and crushed.
Hundreds of lifetimes ending violently because of that one act.
That's the teaching presented. So his death in this final life as Mahāmoggallāna, being beaten by assassins, his bones broken like rice grains, this was the final fruition, the final paying off of that terrible past karma.
So the death that seems so unfitting based on this life
Was, from the perspective of this deep karmic history laid out in the text, perfectly fitting, a direct consequence of his own past actions.
It really drives home the idea of karma's long reach, doesn't it, across lifetimes?
Absolutely. And the Buddha didn't stop there. He also commented on the fate of the naked ascetics and the assassins who were killed by the king.
What did he say about them? Their deaths were fitting too.
Yes, he said their brutal end was also a fitting consequence.
Why? Because they committed murder or instigated it.
Because, as the Buddha put it, they harmed my blameless son, referring to Mahāmoggallāna, his disciple, as blameless in this context.
Ah, so harming someone who is innocent or spiritually pure carries its own severe weight.
According to this teaching, yes. Harming someone blameless, especially a highly realized being like an arahant, which Mahāmoggallāna was, sets in motion incredibly severe negative consequences.
Okay, and this leads directly into the more universal teaching the Buddha gave then, based on this whole incident.
Exactly. He used this specific event to teach a general principle about the dangers of harming the innocent. He recited a verse, it's actually from the Dhammapada, and then explained its meaning.
What's the gist of the verse?
The core message is pretty stark. It says something like, "Whoever assaults with a weapon those who are weaponless and injures those who are harmless quickly comes to one of 10 states."
10 specific negative outcomes.
Yes, and the commentary clarifies what weaponless and harmless or blameless mean here.
Okay.
Weaponless isn't just literal. It means someone free from harmful bodily actions like violence. And blameless or harmless refers to those innocent of wrongdoing towards others or themselves. Specifically, it points to arahants, fully enlightened beings who are considered free from all faults or defilements.
So, harming someone like that brings on one of these 10 states quickly. What are they? The list is quite specific in the sources, right?
Very specific. It's not vague at all. The texts lay them out.
Okay, let's go through them. Number 1.
Harsh physical pain. The commentary gives the example of getting severe headaches.
Okay.
2. Loss of wealth. Particularly hard-earned wealth just disappearing. Breaking of the body. The example given is quite literal, like having your hands or feet cut off.
Grim. Number 4.
Severe illness. And they list several examples. Paralysis, becoming blind in one eye, lameness, being crippled, or even leprosy. Really serious afflictions.
Okay.
Madness. Losing your mind, essentially.
6.
Trouble from the king, which could mean falling out of favor, losing your position, facing legal penalties from the authorities.
7.
Terrible accusation. Being falsely and seriously accused of major crimes, the examples are things like breaking into houses or even treason. ruining your reputation.
Okay.
Loss of supportive relatives, losing the people around you who would normally be your support system, your family, or close connections capable of helping you.
Right.
Destruction of possessions. This one has really vivid examples in the commentary.
Like what?
Like your stored grain just rots away. Your gold inexplicably turns into lumps of coal. Valuable pearls become worthless cotton seeds. Money turns into useless pottery shards. Even your animals, livestock, or pets might suddenly go blind. Just total material ruin.
Wow. That's incredibly specific. And the 10th state.
Your house burns down. And the commentary adds, this might happen mysteriously, like through a lightning strike, even when it's not storming, or by a fire that starts inexplicably, not by arson.
So a list of 10 potential calamities that can strike someone quickly if they harm a truly blameless person, especially in Arahant. That's the teaching.
That's the list presented, yes. And it's not just about suffering in this life either. There's a final kicker.
What's that?
The verse, and the commentary elaborates, concludes that the foolish person who commits such an act upon the breaking up of the body, meaning at death, is inevitably reborn in hell.
So even if you experience one of these 10 things in this life, there's still hell waiting.
The commentary is quite explicit. It says experiencing any one of these 10 calamities in this lifetime is basically a sign, a guarantee that you're headed for suffering in hell in the next life as well.
That is a profound and, frankly, quite terrifying warning about the karmic weight of such actions, as presented in these texts.
It's meant to be a very strong deterrent, clearly. And the sources do mention the impact this teaching had right then and there.
What was the impact?
They note that at the end of this discourse by the Buddha, many people in the audience who heard this explanation connecting Mahāmoggallāna's death to past karma and detailing these consequences actually attained stages of enlightenment.
Really? Like stream entry?
Yes, including stream entry, which is that first definitive stage on the path. So hearing this, understanding this deep dive into cause and effect, it clearly resonated very powerfully with the listeners back then.
Okay, so we've traced this whole narrative from a shocking murder of a revered figure through the jealousy and plotting, the psychic escapes, the eventual acceptance of karma.
Then uncovering that incredibly dark past life story that provided the karmic explanation.
Seeing the brutal worldly justice dealt out by the king.
And finally arriving at this universal teaching from the Buddha about the specific severe consequences of harming the blameless.
So bringing it back, why does this ancient, dramatic, and frankly quite intense story matter to you listening to it? It happened so long ago. Involves concepts like psychic powers and rebirth.
Well, I think at its core, even if you take the supernatural elements metaphorically, the story is a really vivid illustration of a core principle. Actions have consequences.
Karma, basically.
Karma. And it shows that those consequences, according to this worldview, can be complex. They can play out over incredibly long timescales, sometimes lifetimes, and maybe not always in the ways we'd expect. Even someone with huge spiritual merit like Mahāmoggallāna wasn't exempt from their past.
It really underscores the idea that both our positive actions and our negative ones can have incredibly far-reaching effects, maybe beyond what we can immediately see.
Absolutely. And that very specific teaching that came out of it, that list of 10 consequences for harming the innocent and blameless, it serves as a really stark warning within this framework. It highlights the immense gravity placed on our intentions, and especially on who or what is the object of our harmful actions.
It's not just the action, but the nature of the being you're acting towards that determines the severity of the result.
That seems to be a key part of the message here, yes. Particularly regarding those considered spiritually pure or harmless.
And it also presents this really layered view of consequence, doesn't it? You've got Mahāmoggallāna's personal karma from his distant past.
Right.
Then you have the karma of the ascetics who instigated the whole plot. The karma of the assassins who actually carried out the beating.
Yep.
And you have the immediate worldly justice, the king's reaction, which itself had consequences for those involved. It's like multiple threads of cause and effect intersecting.
It really paints a picture of how intricate the workings of cause and effect, or karma and worldly justice, are described to be in these ancient texts. It's not always simple or linear.
So we started with this almost unbelievable event, a top spiritual master meeting this horrific, violent end.
Yeah.
We followed the threads back through jealousy, conspiracy, the failure of psychic powers against ripening karma.
And the final acceptance of that consequence.
Then we uncover that shocking past life story, the root cause, according to the text.
The patricide and matricide, yeah.
And we saw the swift brutal earthly justice for the perpetrators, running parallel to the Buddha's profound teaching on the 10 specific calamities that await those who harm the truly harmless and blameless.
It's quite a journey through cause, effect, and consequence spanning lifetimes.
It really is. So maybe final thought for you listening. Consider the implications of that long reach of our action. It really makes you think, doesn't it, about the potential impact not just on others right now, but maybe on our own future, perhaps in ways we can't even fathom.
How does this ancient understanding of cause and effect, especially that very specific, very serious warning about the consequences of harming the innocent, how might that shape how you view the world, how you view your own choices and actions within it?
It definitely makes you pause and wonder about the unseen ripples, the forces we might be setting in motion with every decision we make, doesn't it? Something to reflect on.